my name is Allie for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the maker behind Crochet in the Mud, where I do both crochet plushies as well as pottery. And today's video is one that has been in the making for a long time. It is part one of my book review for Genna's book. Now, this book came out a long time ago. It does have 40 patterns in it. And my goal when I got the book was to go through and do all of the patterns that it came with. And then I looked in and saw there was a whole section of food, and I said scratch that, everything but the food section. And then I've been making a couple here and there, and that's as far as I've gotten. So I finally sat down and I've had these plushies set aside so that they're not going to markets until I was done with this book so I could make this video. And I finally was like, you know what, I need to focus on this so that I can actually take these to market. So I do have a market tomorrow, and I realized it's time. So Genna's book is split into 3 parts. For each part in the book, I'm going to make a separate video. So today is part 1, which is on the land, which I'll be showing you all of these plushies here, except the mouse. I realized as I was gathering all of the plushies for this video that the mouse is in the wrong spot in the book. Now, that is definitely a common theme throughout this entire book, is errors, which I was really disappointed by, because you would think someone with such a big following would have, or just any book in general, would have their book, their pattern book, pattern tested, edited for grammar mistakes, misspellings, math mistakes. But this mouse is, I looked in the back on the table of contents. The pattern is in the on the farm section. Part 3 is where you can find the pattern, but it's not in this picture, but it's in the picture for part 1 on the land. So definitely a change that was looked over. So part of the reason this has taken me so long is because of how I do new plushies. So when I make a new pattern, I make it a minimum of 2 times. The first time, which was very much needed for this book, is to go through and make sure I understand the pattern, adjust any like bobble stitches on no-sew patterns for tension, which these are all no-sew patterns, so it was very much needed. And then I do it a second time so that I can time myself to see how long it takes me, and then weigh out the materials to see how much it uses, and then I enter those numbers into a formula that I use to figure out how much I'm going to charge for these plushies. So for all of these, I will be telling you how much yarn I used, what type of yarn I used, how long it took me, and the price it came out to. So I do have a handful of these that have been to markets with me, especially because I make 2 of everything. I did at one point go through and take the second plushie of every design to markets. And then a couple of these patterns she had released before the book. So we'll get started, and we're just going to go in order of part 1. So our first plushie is this Brontosaurus here. So my Brontosaurus I did in a very similar color to Genna. So I believe all of the plushies in her book were done with Parfait Chunky, which I have recently started getting into Parfait Chunky, but my main yarn that I like to use is Bernay Blanket. So most of mine were done with blanket yarn instead of Parfait Chunky. I did do a handful of them in Parfait Chunky, which you'll see when we get to them. Now this one I made recently. If you watch my weekly makes, you will have already seen all of these plushies before, because I do show them off when I make them. But this one was very nice because during the Joanne closure, I, on a whim, bought this skein of yarn called Dark Teal. I've never used it before, never bought it. And I looked over at my shelf and I was like, this is perfect for this, which is very similar to, I believe, Genna used Lagoon in hers. And the skein was the exact amount to give me 2, and then I had enough yarn to make 8 of my pocket octopus. So used an entire skein, which was perfect because it's also stashed by September as of me recording this video. So I'm also trying to just get rid of my yarn and use it all up. So this plushie ended up taking me 45 minutes, which is not too bad considering the size. I don't think so. It used 107 grams of yarn, and then my calculations came out to this is going to be a $38 plushie. And like I mentioned, I literally just made this, so I have not had the chance to bring this to markets, so I'm not sure how it will do. But at my upcoming market video, I will tag it up here once it's out. I'm not sure the order I'm going to be posting these videos, and I'll do a little segment at the end of that as to how the plushies from her book did, because I'll have all of part 1 with me. So that's it for the first one. And then the next pattern in her book is the Blissful Bear. So let me find it in my bucket of plushies. So this is my bear, and I made this as one of the first ones I did. So I had not yet discovered my love of the Chenille Brights, Basics Bright, whatever you call it, the Premier blanket yarn. So I'm not too thrilled with the color choice I had, but this is taupe in Bernay blanket, and using 1 gram less, this used 106 grams of yarn, which the taupe that I'm able to find are half skeins, which are 150 grams. So this took up most of that skein, and I did add a safety nose to it just because it felt like it needed it. My only complaints would be using bobble stitches for ears isn't my favorite. But other than that, it's very adorable. I do like the bobble stitch as the tail, and all of the limbs are crocheted in. This is like the same basic body shape that she had for just about every plushie in here. So it's not like there were 40 unique patterns. More like you had like 5 base patterns and then a bunch of modifications to them. So this one took me 40.7 minutes. And I decided it came out to $36. Now this one, I did have the second one floating around markets, and as of now it has not sold. It is currently at my store Eclectic, and it's currently on the shelf, but it hasn't had any takers. And at the markets I was taking it to, again, no takers. I'm not sure. I don't think anyone's even picked it up. So it's definitely not the price. I think it's just not that cute of a bear, which is partly the color choice. If I had my Premier Basics, I probably would have used a different color, or maybe even do a polar bear would be cool with this, just do a white bear. But that's it for the Blissful Bear. And I will be ranking these at the end for like fastest to slowest, lowest to highest price. Maybe I'll even do my favorites. I haven't yet done a ranking of my favorites. But the next on the list is the Dazzling Dragon. Now, I've had this pattern for a long time. I bought it on her Etsy before the book was even announced. This is currently the only one I have in my market inventory. So this one I did a monochrome, so the bobbles are the same color as the body. I made this while I was listening to Fourth Wing and took inspiration from Sigale. It's not necessarily an exact copy of Sigale. I just made a full blue dragon to be like her. So I did not necessarily look at the book when I was doing this, so I don't know if there were any typos. However, I do have grievance with the Etsy pattern that I bought because I feel like it's misleading. It is marked as a 2-in-1 pattern, and then she says, oh, you just use a different yarn size and yarn hook to make a smaller size. Okay, well, any experienced crocheter knows that, and why is this the only pattern she advertises as a 2-in-1? So that was a little disappointing when I bought it because I was super excited to have 2 dragon patterns, and a bigger one and a smaller one, and then seeing the just use a different hook size really annoyed me. But I make this pattern all the time. In Bernay Blanket, it comes out to 58, and then when I make it out of Parfait Chunky, I believe it's 52. The only reason for the price difference is because it uses less materials, or cheaper materials. So it does take the exact same amount of time to make it, but because it uses less stuffing and then the yarn is smaller and therefore you use less and it's a little cheaper, with the same profit margin, they come out to be a couple dollars different. So this one uses 154 grams of yarn, which is quite a lot. That's half a skein of Bernay blanket, or if you're using the Chenille Brights, that's an entire skein. So definitely a lot of yarn goes into this bad boy, and it takes me 76 minutes. So this is the longest pattern of the part 1 of the book that I've made. It takes quite a bit of time, but I love the outcome. You can get really creative with the colors. I have a feeling the reason I have this is because it's monochrome. So whenever I do really fun colors, I like mixing the Parfait Chunky Sea Glass and Bubblegum, I believe are the colors. It's a beautiful dragon, and that one usually goes like that when I bring it. So definitely could use some more dragons, but like I said, they take 76 minutes, and that's when I am focused in, which is not always the case. So about an hour and a half if I'm distracted, which is a lot for a market make. I typically try to focus on like 30-minute plushies when I'm prepping for markets. The next in the book is the Gentle Giraffe. Now this I also made towards the beginning, so I wish I would have done this with more color options. I'll probably make this again in the near future. So when I did my most recent premiere order, they were sold out of a couple of the brown shades, and right now I'm on a yarn buying ban when, of course, now all of the browns are in stock, and I guarantee you come October the yarns will no longer be in stock. It's partly a yarn buying ban for the month of September to stash bust, and also just I'm out of yarn budget right now because I spent so much of it at the Joann closure. So this guy's really fun. He has a little tail, and I used, let's see if I can remember, I believe the yellow is called Buttercup. I believe the spots I used Baby Sand, and then the muzzle is Almond, are my guesses. Now, one complaint I do have, because I am an animal nerd, if you don't know, I do have a biology degree as well as an art degree, and I've worked at many zoos and aquariums throughout my time. And these here, for those of you who don't know, are not horns. These are called ossicones, and they are actually part of the skull. So just having them as little bobble stitches bothers me because that is not accurate to the animal. Now I know a lot of times amigurumi is just cartoonified versions of the animals, but being a nerd that I am, it does bother me that the ossicones are not accurate. They could almost be made kind of like a limb and then crocheted in. The cat pattern I have, I don't use the traditional loaf cat, but that pattern I use, you make the tail and then you're able to crochet it in between the 2 rounds. So I think something similar could be done here, which would be really cool. But I mean, other than that, I don't have any complaints about this. It does have a long neck. My fiance gets really annoyed whenever I crochet a giraffe that doesn't have a long neck. I believe this one, he said, still wasn't long enough. But I mean, in order for it to hold itself up, it does need to be a little shorter. It can't be the super long neck. I am trying to perfect the colors for giraffes because, as I mentioned, I am the nerd, so I need it to be perfect. And I'm on the hunt for the perfect giraffe pattern. So this one is probably one of the best ones I've done so far, but still doesn't satisfy me. So maybe that means I need to make my own giraffe pattern. I don't know. It's been a long time since I made crochet patterns. If you don't know, I do have 2 available on my website, but they were made like when I was first learning how to crochet, and then they didn't do well, so I talked myself out of doing more, even though I have a huge list of things I would like to make patterns for. So it's something I want to get back into, but I just haven't. I always find an excuse not to. So this bad boy used 102 grams of yarn, so similar amount of yarn as the rest of them. It took me just under 1 hour, and the price came out to $48. Now, this duplicate has sold at markets, So we'll see how quickly this one is. I believe the other giraffe went to a handful of markets before it sold. I mean, again, it is $48, so that is a hefty price for a plushie. So I don't expect those to sell at the first market they go to. I typically expect my like 25 and under plushies to be what sells, and then if I get a larger plushie to sell, that is a bonus at my markets. So this cutie is gonna go into that box so that I can bring it to my market tomorrow, and hopefully someone will find interest in it maybe. This next cutie is the Precious Panda, and this one was really enjoyable to make. I don't believe I had any complaints about this one. This one was once again made earlier on. It's been sitting in my bag for months. Its partner has sold. I believe it sold at the store I sell in. So that was a fun day when that sold. One complaint I've seen others make, and I kind of agree, are just because of how crochet works. These kind of look like bushy eyebrows because of the jaggedness, which is nothing against the pattern. It's just something that is a part of it. So maybe doing a front loop or back loop only might help to get rid of that bushiness. But it's a very adorable pattern. This one was much quicker than the last couple I showed you. It used 88 grams of yarn, so much less, which helps with the price. And then it took me 47 minutes to make and came out to $38. So a very adorable panda. I don't think I've done too many other pandas. I know for sure I've done a small like loaf panda. I think that's all I've ever done for pandas. So it's nice to have a larger panda. I do need to make my loaf panda again. It's just, there's so many things to make, and it's kind of hard to pick that out. This next one is also a cutie. I mean, most of the plushies in this were cuties. So we have the Feisty Fox. Now this one I would love to see in Parfait Chunky. But when I was making this, again, this was one of the first ones I made when I first got my hands on the book. I had just recently gotten Parfait Chunky, and what do you know? I never ordered orange. So I now have orange, but I have not yet gotten around to making a fox with it. And I can't decide, this is using the Brights orange. I can't decide if it's too orange of an orange, you know what I mean? But once I figure that out, it would be very handy because I have so much orange to get through, because that was what was available when Bernay Blanket was 90 cents a skein at the end of Joann. So of course I got my hands on 8 skeins of it, so I really need to get through that. But this one I added a nose to because I also just felt like it added to it. When the tail's up, it's really cute, but it usually just hangs down. I don't remember if I had any complaints about this pattern because, again, it's been quite a while since I looked at it. But this one used 114 grams of yarn. It took me 54 minutes, and the sale price I put at $40, and its partner sold literally last week from me recording this. So I did put it at Eclectic, where I sell my stuff, and someone finally bought it. I will throw in here, because I was just finishing up some of the plushies that I made, but something I definitely noticed a lot in this book was typos of when to stuff and when to add eyes. So for a majority of the patterns, it would say start stuffing your plushie, and then it would give you like 2 more rounds to do, and it says, okay, now go add eyes between these 2 rounds. And if you've done plushies before, like, you know, you put the eyes in before you stuff. But it's not like it was one pattern in the book. It was a lot of them where it would tell you to stuff it, and then it would tell you to add eyes later on, which you can't add eyes if you already stuffed the head. So that's just one thing I noticed throughout a lot of the patterns in this book. The next one on my list is honestly probably my favorite of part 1 of the book, and that would be the Raccoon. So this one I did make in both sizes, and this is kind of what made me want to make the fox in Parfait Chunky. But like I mentioned, I did not have orange at the time. So these both were made at the very beginning, and because these are my 2 and they are slightly different, they have not yet been to market. but I have a feeling these guys are gonna fly quickly. The only hard part about this is there's so many color changes. So it's definitely a lot of tie, cut off, tie, cut off. If you carrier yarn, I don't know if that'd be easier, but these guys are adorable. And one other downside to this pattern is it's so many pieces you have to make beforehand. You have to make all 4 limbs, both ears, and the tail. So that's what, 7 pieces, and then make the body. So I will probably make these again, definitely, assuming they sell. But I love this pattern. And the Bernay blanket one used 110 grams of yarn. Took me 56 minutes and came out to $42. And then I did not time both of them. It will be a slight difference, maybe like 1 to 2 minutes. Just because I am a little slower with Parfait Chunky because I'm not used to crocheting with it. But I didn't even bother. It's a negligible difference when it comes to timing. But it did use only 45 grams of yarn. So with the calculations of material costs, this one came out to $38, so about $4 cheaper. The next plushie I have had for quite a long time, and that would be the No Sew Possum. Now this one has been in my patterns for 2 years, a long time, and this one is one of my best sellers. I absolutely love this possum. I have the pattern memorized. I make it all the time, but this one takes me approximately 16 grams of yarn and about 18 minutes to make, and I sell these for 16 and they fly off the shelf. Typically if I bring them to markets, they are going to either sell out or be really close to selling out. So an always make. I'm intrigued to make it in Parfait Chunky, but I don't know if I will, just because that's a lot of, I make listings for every plushie and then I'd have to figure out the new pricing for that and blah 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 blah. So probably won't ever make it out of Parfait Chunky, but I love these possums. Not much to say about those. I mean, they've been around for quite a while. The next one is a very new make to me. So I made the platypus. Now, if you're new to my channel, or if you haven't heard before, I do not make copywritten work. I don't even want to mess with that. I mentioned earlier I have a biology degree. I also have an art degree, and we spent a long time going over copyright law and all of that, and I'm not even going to bother with it. So I did do a lot of research to figure out the natural colors of platypus. So this is the closest I could get. Was I used dark gray for the bill and the feet, and then I used taupe for the rest of the body, and I think it's adorable, and hopefully there's someone who will come up and who actually loves platypus and doesn't just recognize Perry and will love this little guy. But he was a quick make as well. He took me 16 minutes and about 34 grams of yarn, which feels like I did my math wrong if the possum only takes 16 grams of yarn. They're roughly the same size. Let me grab the possum again. Not sure how this one would take double the yarn. Maybe I'll have to go back and look at that. But this one's also going to be a $16 make, and I have 2 of them. They'll go to my market, and we'll see how they do. But I love it. It's just going to be a matter of, do people actually recognize it as a platypus, and will they buy it with natural colors instead of the cartoonified version? Now this next one I'm not thrilled by. I'm not going to mention what it is quite yet, and see if you can guess in the comments what animal you think it is. So we have this. In the book, she did it monochrome. Now granted, she did embroider eyes and nose, and I'm not about doing that. I just put safety eyes in. Can you tell what animal this is? Put in the comments what your guesses are. This was me trying to get as close to natural colors as I could, but unfortunately I don't have the right color. I need like a medium orangish brown. So this is as close as I could get. I mean, I looked at what other colors people use for their crocheted version, and this was about what people normally use. So I'll show you the second iteration. People also did a two-tone version, so I tried to do that. I did forget to make the baubles the darker color, but Now it looks like a pug. So I was like, okay, I'll give myself one more chance. I'm gonna do the color changes, and I'm gonna switch out the other color, which is not the color what I'm going for, and I threw an orange on the head. Does the orange help you know what animal this is? This is supposed to be a capybara. Now I think the 1 round instead of 2 rounds is better in terms of being less puggy. Also the fact that this is not the lighter tan. But I am not a fan of this pattern. It does not look like a capybara at all. Part of it is my color, but also even without color, I feel like nothing about this is giving capybara. But it took 31 grams of yarn. It took me about 15 minutes to make, which is quite a quick make, which I do enjoy. And I'm going to charge $16 for these. So hopefully these 3 go. I mean, I'm not going to correct people if they call them something else, especially this middle one if they call it a pug. But my tags will be labeled to say capybara. So assuming people don't read tags, which they don't, hopefully these 3 sell. I have a feeling I'm going to be stuck with them for a long time. But those were all made out of the Chenille Brights, which was very enjoyable to work with and is so soft. The next on my list is a little lame. It's a snake. So nothing too exciting about this pattern, although I do have some complaints about it. So you'll also see in a later pattern, but the head portion I didn't like. So when you're making it, it tells you to put the eyes on, and your stitch marker is at top of the head. Now, you are doing some head shaping, but it was hard to tell where the eyes go, and I wish there was a picture showing me exactly where they should be. Especially later on, I'll show you a different plushie that had the same head that I messed up a lot. But I assumed it would be straight middle, which it was not, so my head is crooked with the eye placement. But I mean, with the snake, you can't really tell. This one was using the velvet twists. Actually, I have the yarn right here. This yarn, the color is called Alluring Peacock. And I have plans to go through and use up my stash of velvet, and oh boy is this yarn different to work with. So this one, I mean, my pricing came out to $18 for how long it took and materials, and I don't know if anyone's gonna pay $18 for this, but charge what you're worth. So this took me 22 minutes to do and about 31 grams of yarn. So $18 is what is going to be a fair price to me for my time and materials that went into it. So we'll see how this one does. I do have a second one somewhere that I made a while ago, and then I just never did the second one to price it. But I have no idea where number 2 is. So number 1 will go to market, and we'll see if it sells. But then I'm going to skip. There's 2 more left, but I'm going to skip to the last one just so I can talk about that head more. So the one that used the same head was the Leaping Lizard. I'm sorry, my light's a little too bright. So the Leaping Lizard here had the same head type. So the first one I made, I went ahead and did the legs first before I put the eyes in, so that helped me with the placement. And I believe this was one where it told you to stuff before it told you to put eyes in. So it helped me to do the legs first before I went back and did the eyes. And that's when I made the note that the stitch marker is at the top of the head and that it was the very middle. So on my second one, when I was timing myself, told myself it was the middle, and then I think I got this far in the lizard and then saw just my legs were so far off. So I ended up just frogging. I paused my timer, noted where I was in the pattern, frogged it back. I just moved the legs to a different spot, so that head is really crooked. But I can't tell. I think this one was the first one I did, but you can't really tell now. I mean, the head shaping is very minimal. But yeah, definitely wish it was more clear where to put the eyes. Even just a picture would be very helpful, or telling me the stitch number of the round. I've had patterns where it tells you to mark with stitch markers when you're doing that round so that later on you can come back and know those are where the eyes go, especially when it's important with the head shaping. But this guy was made out of Parfait Chunky. He took 16 minutes to make and about 24 grams of yarn, and I'm going to charge $24 for it. I think it can go for that price. It does have the legs of a leggy frog, so not the most sophisticated legs, but I think this one's definitely worth a higher price than my other plushies who take about that same amount of time. So we'll see how $24 does. And then lastly, we have the Tranquil Triceratops. Now this one I want to love, but it just needs some more adjustments. So first I'll tell you how long this took and all of that. So it took me 45 minutes, used 115 grams of yarn, and then it came out to a price of $38. Now this one's second has gone to market and I believe it's sold. Now the thing that I'm not too thrilled about is this frill right here. This is just 5 bobble stitches that she has you do, which my first thought is, okay, that's just a way you have to do it to make it no-sew. But it's not. You could always make a frill here, kind of like how you make the limbs beforehand, and then crochet it in the round when you get to this part. So I just wish that was an added part, and I also feel like these bobbles are really far apart. They should be closer up on the head. But that's just me being nitpicky with this. So then if we want to rank them in order of how long they took, which also correlates for me almost with the pricing, I will also throw them up on the screen, but our under 20 minutes would be the Capybara, the Platypus, and the Possum. And then I guess I'll give the snake its own category. It took me 23 minutes. And then from 40 minutes to 60 minutes would be almost everything else, with the bear, the Brontosaurus, the panda, the raccoon, the fox, the giraffe. And those all are $36 to $48 ranging. And then the dragon took me 76 minutes. So that's definitely the longest make of all of these, which is understandable. It has the most parts. So my overall impressions of the book so far, again, I have not gotten too far. I have made, I think I have 3 more done from parts 2 and 3. So not too many more than part 1 is completed. But I wish this was just advertised a little different. It also, if you can see at the front, it says 40 super cute, super small plushies. Would you classify this as super small? I would classify these as super small. But the majority of this book are what I label in my store as medium to large plushies. So advertising them as super small plushies is a little deceiving, but also she makes them out of Parfait Chunky. So yes, they do come out smaller. But even if I pull out my Parfait Chunky raccoon, that's still not a super small plushie. That's still a sizable size. Like it's the size of my head, even if you don't count the tail. Like, they're pretty big. But overall, I do still enjoy this book. The majority of these plushies I will make frequently. So there are a handful of these that are remakes in my opinion. And also just for the price, you can't beat it. I mean, I want to say it was like $20-ish and you get 40 patterns. So you really can't beat that price. Even if I don't make half of these, that's still only $1, a little more than $1 per pattern. So definitely a great value for what you get if you ignore all the typos and take the time to go through and correct them. I know she has, in one of her videos, posted some of the typos that need corrected, which will be in a future video, because I know for sure the frog had a lot of issues, but that is for the on the water portion. So I hope you enjoyed this. Even if I sounded negative, I'm still very happy with this book. I will continue to make parts 2 and 3, and then whenever those sections are done, I will get a video out to you all, and hopefully it does not take me as long as it did for part 1, because I believe part 1 has been a 6-month process. but I will link those videos up here. I'll make a playlist whenever they do come out. And I also have another book that I have been neglecting that I am hoping to do another one of these videos for. That might be a thing for after holiday markets. But I have the Crochet by Ricky. I'll grab the book real quick. I have this book, which I think I've only made the jackalope out of. But super excited for this book. If there are any copywritten ones, I won't do them. I don't think any of them are like copywritten, but they are some fun patterns with a bunch of cryptids and stuff. So definitely excited for that book once I get around to it. But let me know in the comments if you've used this book. What is your go-to pattern from this book that you will forever make? But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!